Who among us hasn't thought about having the power to summon a dragon to smite those who wrong us or who we feel deserve it? Well, you're about to find out. King Sorrow, nearly 900 pages, a dragon, a Faustinian bargain, six friends, 4 decades, and a great moral conversation about do you deserve to decide who lives and who dies? It's definitely one of the most ambitious things Joe Hill has ever written, and I read it this March. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Dog Eared Thoughts. I'm happy you're here. Today is another deep dive. I'm definitely going to try to stay away from spoilers, but pretty much everything else we'll talk about. And that is about this book, King Sorrow by Joe Hill. It was absolutely amazing. I read it in 2 days, despite how big it is, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. So, buckle up. All right, so I think a lot of people already know the name Joe Hill. He has definitely been put forth a really great novels. He's been part of things that have been on Netflix, um, writing in graphic novels and things like that. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, he is one of the sons of none other than that Stephen King. So in and of itself, and that really shows in this book. He pulls some Easter eggs in there that's tied to kind of his father's work. But he also has, as I said, written a lot on his own and really stands on his own as a great author. 2007, his first book, Heart Shaped Box, came out, followed by Horns in 2010, which you may recall from a movie with Daniel Radcliffe on it. One of his most well known novels is Nosferatu in 2013, and then The Fireman, which came out in 2016. And while it seems like, hey, 9 years is a long time to wait for the next book, Joe has been busy as a co-creator for the Lock and Key Netflix series. He's written and was part of the graphic novel series related to Lock and Key, as well as other comics and graphic novels with his father through DC, as well as putting forth a lot of short stories and whatnot. So he has absolutely been busy in putting together lots of different mediums in art, but then while also working on King Sorrow. One of the seeds, or there have been many seeds, I think, for this book, as you can tell from the way that it rolls out. But one of the ones that started with him, which is related to a dragon, was from his previous novel, where there was a deadly pathogen called dragon scale. And as he was writing that, it stuck in the back of his mind that he wanted to put a dragon in his next book, and so he did. One of the other influences is absolutely a study in Arthurian legends, so King Arthur, dark academia as well. So the place setting for the very beginning of the book is this, small liberal arts college. So the dark academia piece is in there. You'll have King Arthur, which is very obvious when I talk about the character names and their arcs in and of itself often will absolutely fit into the Arthurian legends there. And then he also really wanted to, and he said so in one of his interviews, write a book that was dedicated to his wife, which is what this book is, and really wanted to impress her by putting a lot into one book. And I think he absolutely succeeded in putting a lot into one book. And one of his interviews, he did say that he doesn't really outline books directly. He really finds the characters, and as he wants to spend time with the character, and as the character evolves throughout writing, that is his process, or one of his processes, and puts them in different situations and how do they respond to it. And one of the things that works best about this is that for such a big book, it moves quickly. He kind of said that the language has to be lean and direct, and but yet you can write elegance without necessarily losing the zip and the discipline in that. And so absolutely the case. Like, despite the fact that it does a really good job at describing situations and describing the people that are in them, and moving these characters along in a way that is really believable for the in-universe that it is. Um, it also moves very fast, and it is an incredibly easy read. And it's not a read that requires you to understand King Arthur or requires you to understand Dark Academia. Um, those are just enhanced by the novel itself. So it absolutely pulls from a lot of different places, but moves really, really quickly. All right, so let's jump into the characters real quick. So the book would kind of talks about there being six main characters and six main friends, and there definitely are. But I think when you look at the totality of the story, there are really probably eight characters totally. One is absolutely King Sorrow himself, which is the dragon, and as I get into the plot, it will become obvious how he fits into the story as the driver of the story. But the six friends that are kind of six core friends in there are Arthur Oakes. We start off with. He's kind of the entry point at the start of the book, and all of the characters start as college students or around college age, so to speak. And Arthur is in a student in a small liberal arts college in Maine, studying medieval studies. He's not super rich, but he has enough money set aside through trust funds and others where he's going to be easily able to live into this world, and then go to Oxford in England after that for graduate studies, and that is his goal as we meet him. The other piece that's important is that he is very much focused on supporting his mother, who, when we first meet him, she's in jail. She's an activist. She was an ethics professor. She was arrested at a protest and went to school, went to jail. And so a good chunk of the beginning of the book is about his conundrum of, can he make sure that she gets up to the parole, and will she get out, on all the things that get into that. Arthur is probably the positive moral center of the group in terms of he sees good. He is focused on being good, and that is kind of his approach to things. Now, it also makes him a very uncomplicated character to some degree, at least in the latter parts of the book. At the beginning of the book, he actually is a little bit more complicated because he is the reason why King Sorrow is introduced into our world, or the world that is in this book. So that's important to know. The second character to talk about is Colin Wren. So he's the rich boy, so to speak, of them. He's going to the school, but his grandfather lives in a private estate. He used to work for the government and has his own money, but he also, both Colin as well as his grandfather are obsessed with the occult and kind of mystical magical powers and things like that. And the driver of how that transpires really comes out from Colin, and he is what I would say his role evolves into moving from what you would look at as someone who thinks more broadly and is willing to consider the magic and the afterlife and other dimensions and things like that, to someone who is really focused more on not only consolidating power, but consolidating money and consolidating the power that comes with information and controlling information. And you could almost see that being kind of very, very much a tech billionaire kind of stand-in. But although he might not be that rich, but he definitely drives a lot of that in that regard as he evolves. The next one is Donna and Donovan. They are twins, and Donovan goes by Van in most of the book. And these are probably, or at least two of the more complicated characters in the entire book. Donna, as it evolves throughout the book, you find out that she is suffering from a lot of trauma in relation to when she was a child, she saw one of her best friends get abducted and presumed dead. And part of the things that drive her uh, is her friend still out there? Can there be justice for what happened, and who did what they did? Um, and then Van is kind of her grounding point, so to speak, where like he goes out of his way to try to keep her from falling too far into the world of revenge, or the deep end, or whether it's drugs or other things. And he doesn't necessarily is the best at succeeding that, but he is that center and that counterweight. Um, and she Donna and Van really connect well and work well together in that regard. And then there's Allison Shiner, who is also one of the students when we first meet her. Um, and it is interesting in that she's probably one of the quieter characters across the book. I think maybe um, in the background more, even outside of Arthur. But I would argue that for the most part, at least most Colin, Donna, Van, they all kind of orbit Allie in as they call her in the book. And while she's not necessarily loud, or she has the she embodies the physicality that the rest of the people in the group do not. And it's definitely a strong emotional journey for her in a lot of ways. And then there's Gwen, who, sticking with the Arthurian legends of Arthur and Guinevere, Arthur and Gwen, right? She is the local. She's not a student. She doesn't have the money to kind of join this group, but her father works for this in the school as kind of a custodian. But she gets wrapped in with the five other people, and in that she becomes kind of the moral center of trying to counterweight all the bad things that are going to happen in this book. Her arc really focuses on trying to save lives, versus the rest of the book, which is in a kind of negative way of ending lives, so to speak. And then the only other character that I want to focus on that kind of continues throughout the most of the book is Tanya Niswander. And one of the things that is related to her is that she's kind of the catalyst for the things that happen to Arthur at the beginning of the book. And then she continues to appear throughout the rest of the book as a supporting character, but one that really helps provide the viewpoint of someone who has seen the bad side of the world, and what does she do with it, right? So in her character, her sister and her sister's boyfriend are objectively bad people. They blackmail people, they rob people, they are drug dealers. That all of this. They've sometimes Tanya's been abused by her mother and parents who are in there. Her sister will use her for money in lots of different ways. And in the book, she's pregnant by someone that she doesn't know who it is, and part of that is because of her sister and her sister's boyfriend, and she becomes kind of the how do we protect her. This Arthur becomes her knight in shining armor in a way that's not necessarily romantic, but it is supportive in that regard, and that also follows along with Gwen and a lot of the other people in the characters. So those are a lot of the main characters. And again, it seems like a lot of characters, but again, it's a 900-page book, almost 900-page book. You definitely have room for them to grow, room for them to breathe, and see where they go, which is really incredible. The plot of this book, it's fairly straightforward when you look at it. So, as I said, we are introduced at the beginning of the book to Arthur. And the way that the general plot unfolds is... while he's visiting his mother in prison, he sees Tanya and her family, who's also visiting their mother in prison, and through an act of what he feels is sticking up for Tanya, ends up becoming embroiled with this family. And what they force him to do is, in order to ensure that his mother does actually get out of prison on parole and isn't beaten up. Um, he is asked to, once he describes what he does, they want him to steal the rare books from the library that he works at the school, and they're going to sell them. And so he starts doing this despite his better instincts, but it's obviously to save his mother. And as the beginning of the book goes on, while the rest of his friends end up finding out what's going on and they help him, but as it becomes clear that even though there really is no end to this blackmail that's going to happen, the group decides that they need to take some other drastic measures. And one of the biggest drastic measure that goes into this is summoning King Sorrow from the Great Dark to kill Tanya's sister and boyfriend, and therefore ending this cycle of blackmail. And the twist on it becomes that Arthur, who generally you kind of look at as probably someone who wouldn't do this, ends up going along with it. But the twist that really gets them, in that they don't read the fine print, so to speak, when dealing with dragons, is that it's not just a one and done thing, that King Sorrow comes back to them, and every year they must give him a name or names for him to dispatch, or he will dispatch them. And so that is the crux of the rest of the book, of literally spanning, the 80s, 90s, to the early 2000s, all the way into the, 20 teens, so to speak, where they have to they go through this process of evolving with guilt, with certitude that they are doing the right thing, all of these different emotions that roll through there. Because, as you can imagine, a dragon is not a surgical strike instrument. He wreaks havoc. He does massive amounts of damage. He will destroy a whole building if one person is in there that he's supposed to get into. And so the result is that there's obviously a lot of innocent people who get impacted by, or people who aren't on the list, who are impacted by this. As well as the fact that, one of the things that King Sorrow does is he doesn't just show up one day a year and kill whoever you pick. He actually tortures them mentally and emotionally in the months leading up to that last thing. So it's an extra layer of torment that, do these people, does the main characters really feel is necessary? Like, are the people that they're picking are so bad that they deserve all of this, right? And so that is the moral dilemma and the crux of the bargain that goes into the story of this book. So when you're talking about the themes of this book, it's clearly a traditional, bargain of Faustian bargain with the devil, which is, you think you're doing something to provide a net good in this world. But really, at the end of the day, the question then becomes, like, who do you sacrifice? And yes, there are lists that's created, and you pick, at first it's easy to pick maybe a serial killer or a mass murderer, or people who have done terrible things. And the book does a very good job of showing that characters have a very good job, at least initially, of justifying their decisions to themselves and to others, about that they're making the world a better place, right? But the other piece to it really becomes is that do you really have the ability to make the decision on who lives and who dies, right? And so that becomes the horror isn't necessarily the dragon necessarily. It's the look across the world of is life, what's the value of a life or lives, and is the life of one better than the life of another, and that is the piece to it that really kind of drives across of that, and the weight of all of those decisions, and how does it fracture the friendships, or solidify the friendships of these groups, of these people who are wrecked with guilt. So Gwen maybe works very hard at saving lives to kind of offset the lives that she knows that they're erasing. And as this moves through time, and if you kind of think of this as kind of like maybe Earth 2 or mirror Earth, where dragons exist and other things, we go into real world situations where they're talking about there's a significant debate about choosing Osama bin Laden after 9/11, and or what is done against people who are in Rwanda, and the genocide there and things like that. And so it's definitely plays on what's going on in the world, or has gone in the real world, all the way to with going on with the moral dilemma that goes on with that. And despite all of that, the book just doesn't let up. Like, it's constantly moving with action. Every time that the time frame moves forward in the years or the decades, it is pretty clear that you're hitting the highlights or the biggest pieces that go into that. So at some point, some of the characters are kidnapped by a group where they know that they have been targeted to die, and they are trying to torture some of the groups to people in our friend group to get out of it and release them from this fate. There is also a reality where, and like I said, you're living in a world where things evolve, where other creatures outside of King Sorrow exist. And they do a really great play on internet trolls. And are they people? Are they trolls? Or are they kind of trolls in the mystical kind of old medieval story sense, right? And things like that. So again, there's lots of action, lots of character movement, lots of things going on. So it is absolutely one of those books where, as you read it, you're moving, and you don't feel like it lets up, but in a way that is not overwhelming to get through it all. So, from a standpoint of what you might look at as a criticism, anytime you have a book this big, there are parts that drag a little bit. And I know I just talked about how fast the book moves, but there are pieces of that. And I'll as I mentioned, the kidnapping plot, like, some of that stuff you may feel, and as you're reading that, or at least I felt like maybe, hey, that could have been shorter. We could have gotten through that a little faster. Although the end result of it is incredibly important for the rest of the plot, and drives the ending of that book significantly. You get into that. The other piece is, if you're buying the bit that this is kind of either an alternate world or is our world. There are times where, as we moved into the 2000s and 21st century, where, as you're talking about, again, Osama bin Laden or some of the other real people who are in this, in our world, it's a question of whether that takes you out of the story or leaves you in the story because it's almost too real, so to speak. And as well as the fact that, hey, you know what, we certainly could have gone after some. If we're going to start bringing up names, there are a lot of names we could pick from, and so I think Hill tries to thread the needle of people who aren't selected and died and didn't die versus people who are selected, and part of that is again goes into Colin's story of why he's picking the people that are being picked, and what is he really trying to drive from that, and it can definitely bring up a good conversation about kind of where we are these days with U.S. imperialism and other sort of things. Like, it kind of ties it all together in a not very overt way, but a way that's very obvious as well, kind of as well. And so it's interesting in that parts, but it certainly could be an area of criticism from a standpoint of, we could have picked more obvious people to kill, or hey, this is this is a little too real, maybe for such a fantastical story. Like, is that really important? So that's definitely an area of criticism, or where it could be better. But overall, again, I did not feel that took me out of the story too far. But I definitely recognize that as an area of what people are saying about it. I think the other piece that's really fun about this book is there's lots of interesting Easter eggs related to that, and some are very obvious, and some aren't. There's an interesting parallel to Joe Hill's, obviously his father's book, The Dead Zone, in relation to the main character there had psychic abilities, and one of the questions that is posed in that is that is it ethical to maybe assassinate someone to basically avert an atrocity that hasn't occurred, right? So there's some of that, moral questioning that goes into this book too, about why the people that are being selected, are they picking the people who, yes, they're bad now, but what's the downstream effect of it? There's definitely a very overt echo to the Dark Tower series in terms of, and if you're fans of those series, it'll definitely stand out to you. And there's also a lot of influences, especially in the beginning, related to like dark academia. So Joe Hill kind of talked about how The Secret History by Donna Tartt was certainly something that helped influence this story a bit, as well as Cloud Atlas in some degree as well. So, in David Mitchell's book. So it absolutely, kind of, you see some themes in there as well. And then just in general, the true medieval Dragon Slayer Arthurian legend kind of approach to that. Obviously, we have Arthur and Gwen, which is an obvious call to that. But really, just in general, so there's a lot of that in all of that. So absolutely some fun. It's a fun book. It's a fun Easter egg book from that perspective. But also, it helps drive the plot, which doesn't really necessarily take away from what you're reading at all. Should you read this? I absolutely would recommend this book. I feel like it's a genuinely great book. The dragon is terrifying. He does a good job of really showing but not showing how terrifying the dragon is, and not just because he can destroy things, but also the kind of how he approaches and tortures people throughout, as well as even the main characters as well, who are in this bargain. I would absolutely recommend it. I think the characters are definitely relatable in different ways, but also it has that fantastical element to it as well. That's just it really just it kind of hits the spot. So absolutely recommend it. One of the best things I've read in the month of March so far. And check it out, whether it's in your library. Always recommend checking out the library if you don't want to go out and buy it. I am pro library for sure. So that will do it for our episode here at Dog-Eared Thoughts. I know much like the book itself, we talked about a lot of things, but would love to hear your thoughts if you've read King Sorrow or anything else by Joe Hill. What are your thoughts? What are some of your favorite books by him? Where does this kind of rank in his books and in terms of the ones that you've read? So absolutely drop it in the comments. Let me know what you think. And as always, would love it if you like and subscribe. I'm going to keep doing this, so I'd love to hear from you all, and I will see you in the next one.